what we think generally is when we think of a business, you start with an idea. So particularly, let me set my audience now. I'm speaking to those who have a business idea. You haven't started, or you've started it and you are still working it out and you're struggling to find an easier way or probably a more stable way. It may also apply to those who are already successful in it, and they can also get some insights into how they can change the track that they are working on. Particularly, I'm targeting youngsters who are into this area, and they want to do something interesting or innovative, or want to have a startup. That's why I think people call it a front end and a back end. So to start with, they try to think simple. And the challenge is simplicity remains only in the beginning. As you go ahead and try to do things, it's no longer a front end and a back end. As I progress in my talk, it would be nice if I can take a very simple example. Let's say a very simple example is a to-do app. Now, I know you're not going to do a business around that right now, but that is something that everybody would understand. So in a to-do app, what do you see? You see a front end, you have an app on the stores and people download and use it. And then probably you have a premium version of that. What happens at the backend? When we say backend in general, it means the server. Right now, backend generally means, database. That's what, when I interact with students and I get to talk to them a lot, because I speak in universities and colleges as well, they think backend is generally database, and with the advent of NoSQL, it looks more of that. You don't need a middleware at all. While great applications are built on that, I think you should look at it as a backend as a complete infrastructure. So you have your version control, and you have a team working on it, you have project tracking, and you have machine learning involved in it. And now when it comes to so many things, you are an individual, or you are probably a team of 5 or 10 or 20 people. How do you do all this in a short time? That is the agenda of this talk. So with the agenda set, we proceed. This is the expectation. What I said is, you have a business idea, how do you implement it, right? So as you see on the picture on the right, I just want to focus and say that, it's a sphere, not a front end and a back end. In this talk, I'll take you to the entire spectrum of the open source technologies. We begin from the first line of code you write and what do you do in it, and then when you go and have your sales team ready and say then, okay, we are ready, why don't you go ahead and convert into sales. So that's where it is. Here we'll be talking about all the modern technologies and also how traditional technologies are transformed and used in a modern way. So even if you make a product, you would want your users to use it. Your app just present on the App Store with say 1,000 downloads or even 50,000 downloads, but people are not using it, isn't a success. So how do you get your users hooked onto what you have built? That is what I'm going to talk about in this session. So underline it, it's a sphere. Don't think of only just two parts, have two teams, one as the front end and the back end, and they will do everything. I don't think that's a great way to proceed. However, it is a good way to start because you don't have anything to start with. Picture with me, like you would have studied this in your high school. This is the, what you can say, inside the earth. So on the top, you have the crust, and then you have a mantle, then the outer core and the inner core. However, you would see that on the top, the crust is not always soil. It can also be water. So let's look at what gets into a business idea getting implemented. Then how will you benefit? You will benefit from this session is like you'll get a complete picture of how to use the technologies so that your business idea can use the open sources, including those high-funded things which probably will take you time to implement if you're doing it from the ground up. So how you can get in your big data, ML, with your front-end, back-end, what we talked about. I also want to talk to those people who have probably given up your idea, saying that it takes too much effort, too much time, and there isn't much joy in doing it because there isn't end that you're seeing to it. It goes on and on, and with the technology changes, you're probably not able to keep a pace with it. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. So even if you're watching the recording, I want to encourage to stay on and till the end, so that you will know what is the complete picture involved in it. And if you have not taken and indulged into, you have not jumped into it, you can also know what it takes to get into a business of open source or business that uses open source. Your idea should be to acquire. You acquire how-tos and what-tos from from online sources, from meetings like this, from meetups. Acquire what are the things that is needed, and then the next thing should be, how do you apply that? How do you apply that ideas? So, and then the third step is, don't just wait with it, you achieve it and then go back and acquire more and apply more, right? With this said, let's get about, okay, now I have talked about what you're going to get, let me talk about who we are. We started up, about 7-8 years ago. We found the company, but before that we were working in IBM. And during my tenure in IBM, I filed 7 software patent applications, and so far I have 20 years of experience. We have also helped a lot of college students and freshers start up their companies, and they come here, they work with us for a short time, and we help them to get on, fill in the gap between the college and what the industry needs. We primarily work around open sources, but we do use other proprietary tools as well. I'm helped with Roshni, who takes care of the operations, and she has experience with IBM and Indian School of Business. So let's go on to the next part. I try to use this slide very often, and I know what you're thinking right now. It's very clear that I'm comparing a traditional phone with a modern iPhone. Okay. If you are to say, for example, you are in your college and you're learning electronics and communications, and you're also interested in coding, you come up with a device which you have inherently developed. Think with me. You develop something yourself, right? And now you are so excited that something that took companies years together, you have developed it, and you have built this phone. You're very excited, and you're thinking that you're smart enough. Of course, you're smart. You have done it together. A small team of 2 or 3 or 5 people or 10 people have done this, but then this will never sell. So if you have built a to-do app, or let's say, what can we do? You see the Zoom session that we have, this YouTube sessions that we're having, it's so bland, there's no interaction. It's all virtual. I can hardly see anybody, right? I don't want to have multiple screens because it interferes with my PPTs. And I don't know who is listening to me. There's no questions, no interactions. I'm talking, and it's not lively. So you come up with an idea, like someone from, I think, Shashank and Aditya from Salesforce in the previous session before the prior one, they talked about having emojis. They talked about having a virtual, improved virtual sessions, right? They called it positive, and it is like incredible virtual events. Like Kahoot, what they do is you can have live questions and all. So you come up with an idea with saying that let's make Zoom better, or a better Zoom. How do you make it successful? That is the agenda. You can't just make this traditional phone that was a big hit about 15-20 years ago and expect to be successful. You have to build something which users will look for. So let's get into it. What does it need in the beginning? In the beginning, you need an idea, of course. And with the idea, you don't just let it lie there. What you will do with your idea is you will take your idea and convert it into the business. So I've written something like a code here. You take your idea, convert into a business or your business function. You build your product. And I'm talking it as a promise. That means the product is under development. It will be a product shortly. And at the same time, because you're the head, you also try to build the marketing. You try to see how people will perceive it, and you try to test the market. You apply the observations of your prototypes. You take the feedback, you add, all the information that you have, and even the latest technology, and see if your idea will succeed. That's the first thing you're trying to do. Now, at the core, what do you need when you start? Don't ever start your code with, writing your first index file or the main file. Don't start with that. When you make the folder, when you start your project, the first idea you should have is a Git, a version control. I know you know about it, but the reason I'm stressing it is because we don't practice it when we are building a prototype. And slowly your prototype becomes complex. You have more people, more team working across the globe, or a friend somewhere who's just helping you out, and there is such a mess. If you're hearing it for the first time, this will help you. Learn Git and start using GitHub and GitLab. My personal preference is GitLab. Then project tracking. Even if you're an individual, you need to do project tracking. Okay, let me remind you, the purpose of this session is how to get a small business idea into a great one, how to make it successful. I know this session is being watched by successful people working in the big MNCs, and they are probably CEOs, CTOs, or chief managers of HR or some other department. And these things may look trivial to you, but if you look back, not all of us had that opportunity, and probably you too walked the way up the ladder, right? At that time, you didn't have all the infrastructure that you have now. So I'm talking to those who are big names. So if you're from a college, or if you just passed out, or it's the first organization you're working, or you don't have a job right now, that's a very possible situation right now. So I want to tell you, I want to encourage you, don't give up. These are the ways where you can implement your ideas. Okay, of course they cost some money, but I'm also giving you some free alternatives wherever possible, either cheaper or free alternatives. One thing that most people don't understand is when you say open source, it probably means free. Not always. Okay, I think most people will agree. Open is in the sense the source is open. You can use it. Okay, but you still have to pay for some services around it. So let's see if you have the minimum cost and you start a project. So when you make a project plan, and there are great tools, really great tools. And one of the first ones that I started with was Microsoft Project, but then that costs you money, and there's a subscription plan. You can start with Trello, you can start with Toggle Plan. They all give you free plans up to 5 users, a certain number of users. But then if you don't want to do that, you can also go with Google Calendar. I'll show you in my next slide how you can use a Google Calendar to manage your Google project plan. And you can try, when Trello is being the kind of most popular, Trello is out there, but then Toggle Plan is very interesting. You want to try that, try ProofHub. They all come up with some kind of free plans. But then if you don't want to put too much time into that, Google Calendar is easy to use and free to use. You can do that, you can share easily, and there is no per user subscription, right? It is free, unlimited, and until you get some investment, you can do that. Then instead of just putting your ideas on the paper, I'm also suggesting that you use some prototyping tool. Lunacy is pretty interesting. I want you to try that. Adobe XD is pretty professional, and there's a paid version for that. It's a paid thing. Then Sketch is popular. You can try Lunacy. It works on Windows as well. I think it is the Sketch for Windows. So these are the 3 things that you can try. Of course, there are plenty. There are web-based ones that are free, but then I've seen that at a certain point of time, it is either limited to number of projects or number of users, so it doesn't go on for free forever. That's how this project tracking looks for in it is Toggle Plan. It is pretty interesting with a very good user interface, and of course, you would have seen Google Calendar, and then you can spend some time and design your work accordingly. You can share your available slots and free and the task in that. It is not modern, it's not advanced, and it is good if you have 2 or 3 people working together. It's an easy one. And in that case, you can use the free versions of any of the other project plans as well. Okay, now moving on. Why is it that I put the version control at the core? Remember the sphere, the earth, the crust of the earth, and then the inside the earth. At the core of the earth, at the core of your coding is one second. At the core of your coding is the version control, because that's what everything is. You have everything about your code. So always start with version control. And here you see, you can share easily. The codes can be shared. It doesn't get mixed up. And if something goes wrong, somebody thanks the server, you know who did it. Okay. So because you will be working virtually, it's really important that you know who is responsible for doing what, and then you can retrieve it. So here is a solution that I want to say. And in case something happens, crash and all, you can always recover. And you will do this. If you're a CS player, you'll definitely do this. Let me take an analogy. If you don't understand what is it get, let's say that you are a script writer, okay, and you have come up with a thriller script, and then you go on to producers and they suggest you certain changes to accept your script. Then it is reviewed by the actors, directors, and other proofreaders, and everybody has an input. And you are merging, adding all their inputs. You start with the pen and paper, and then you give up. Probably a thriller is no longer a thriller because you don't know when is that, the plot revealed. So it's always safe to start with this. And we will not limit ourselves with Git. We will also get on to DevOps. And that's the thing that you will gradually move on to. Now let's get on to the next part is when you do the user interface, what are the most popular ones? I'm not covering everything, but these are the popular ones. If you're going for a native app, you probably start with Kotlin or Java. But then if you're going for a hybrid, you try Angular or React Native. Do study on Quora and other platforms, like which one suits your project idea. And Flutter is the rising one, so you may want to try that. My favorite is Angular, and then things may change with time. And let me talk about the middleware. So it's one of the layers. Think of one of the layers out there. So where do you write the business logic? It's because we have come from a web background. We have the web running already. These are the content management systems that we have had, so we can use these content management systems. And particularly, it can be used as headless. That means it doesn't show its own page, but it gives you JSON data and other RESTful data for you to show it on your applications. So you do all your business logic in this. Again, do your study on which one of these meets your requirement. My personal favorite is Drupal. But then these are not the only ones. You can have other proprietary or custom middleware. Here's Finacle is just an example. So you can have plenty of them where you write the business logic, and then you can have a front end on top of that. Behind the scenes, these days you don't only have MySQL, you also have NoSQL. You don't have RDBMS alone. You also work with NoSQL like MongoDB, Firebase, and you can also have a serverless structure that works on these. So now the question is NoSQL or RDBMS. These are the examples of that. I would say that you should work with a combination of both. If you're thinking on long term, a combination of both is required. But then if it's a small project, you just want to have an authentication, you want to have a chat app, I think going ahead with a NoSQL could be good. Again, make your study on that. Now, there are some advantages of NoSQL. It is highly scalable because generally you get to use cloud. So when you have millions of users, I think that you made a beautiful app and suddenly there is a rise in it. Okay, something like Zoom, it rose up because of the pandemic. So you made something like Kahoot or something, which sees a lot of users and they scale up anytime. So because it's on the cloud, it's easier to scale up. Performance, the response, like when you have games or quiz, when you have leaderboards, the response time in chat, all these things, you need low latency. You cannot wait more than a second, and that's a delay. You know what happens when my mic doesn't work? You get restless, right? So we just want a quick response all the time. Then this is possible with a serverless structure. You just have the NoSQL and you can go ahead and do that. So you don't need all the crust of the earth every time. It depends upon what you're building. And then you get real-time updates. Also, the advantage is you can have offline data. So in certain cases, if you're, for example, if you're making some learning apps and all, this could be useful. UI agnostic. So when you use NoSQL, it doesn't care about what kind of front end you use. So the things that I showed you for UI, it can be any of them. And it is UI friendly because of the lightweight. You can keep changing it. You make your design work as your designer has designed it, not because your code is telling you or your framework is forcing you to use it. So that's where you can get in a better user experience. And then the lighter code and the global clusters, it means like it can work across the regions, like across the continents. You can replicate that easily because you're on the cloud. And cloud as such gives you a backup easier and faster. Now, these advantages that I've told you about NoSQL doesn't mean that RDBMS doesn't have them. They do have, but then when the volume gets higher, the transactions gets too much, there's a behavioral data. Okay, like where did you walk in? What did you look at? Did you click? Did you stay on the video? Now, these things are ephemeral. Like you don't have to keep it for long in your real database. These are behavioral. So for that, you would need NoSQL. You can build apps with or without the middleware. Let's think about it. You can make a weather app and probably you don't need a middleware for it. You have a front end and NoSQL. You can build a gaming app. Again, you probably don't need a middleware for this. You can have NoSQL at the back end and then you have a very good UI. Then ad technologies. I wouldn't say that you would go with this ad technologies exclusive with NoSQL. Now, ad technologies need a lot of ephemeral data, a lot of tiny data. Say, for example, the real-time bidding, targeting, whose ad should I place? If you're making a complex application like that, you cannot do it. You possibly cannot do it and meet, you cannot make an iPhone kind of stuff compared to your traditional phone if you're not using NoSQL. And then the banking sector. This is a pretty good example. They cannot do with the regular middleware. Not only the middleware, they have an, ocean of software. They use a lot of stuffs in it, but then in today's time, they cannot work without NoSQL. With all the transactions and the number of expectations that the user has. Earlier, the user used to just walk in once in a month or twice or two to just check their passbook data. That was about 20 years ago, right? But now people check it regularly. They make payments so often. Even the payments less than 10 rupees is made via the UPI payment gateways. So banking also cannot live without NoSQL. So it's imperative, like if you're a beginner, I want to tell you, these are things you can collect, are very important for you to invest your time in. Even the retail and the entertainment media. And I know today nobody knows more, no generation, or rather we didn't knew about it, about the Netflix and the Prime and other Hotstar, all this stuff. We didn't use it as much before. But all these things are actually built with NoSQL and also the middleware. Let's take the use cases, and you already know about it. Think of Uber or any cab company. Now, for all the riding companies, where the user is, where is he moved now, the data changes so often. So such instant quick data can be done only with NoSQL. Even for the chat and all, it's better you do with a non-RDBMS system. All these things, as I've shown you here, works around the NoSQL. But yes, some of them do have regular middleware. You need fraud detection, and for all fraud detection, you need to have a lot of data, which we need machine learning. Okay, let's now move on to the comparison of NoSQL. This is my personal comparison. Go ahead and do your own study. I think MongoDB gives you the freedom of whatever you want to use. Compared to Firebase, you're tied down to that particular provider, and the Amazon DynamoDB, you're again tied to that. And DynamoDB is something that you cannot migrate out and use in some other cloud. Then cloud services, you can choose any of them. And I suggest that if you're starting out an idea, start with the cloud online. Start with AWS or with Azure or cloud. I know there are panelists or there are speakers from all the platforms. And even though you might not have seen Alibaba Cloud a lot, but then a lot of Indian providers are using Alibaba Cloud. So I don't have a personal preference of anyone. Any of these services, nobody has paid me. I wish they could, but then I'm not speaking for them. Now the next part is how to hook the user. Most of the ideas that you want to do is you will get through this book. I recommend that you read this. I want to say that, no, I'm not associated with this author, but then his book is available on Amazon. It is also available on Audible. You can just get that and spend time if you're starting on a project. I'll give you an outline of what this particular book, what this author talks about. He says that how to hook the user. The first thing you need to do is user should expect something when the app opens, something new. And if it is not a news or a media app, you have probably kind of an Uber or a riding app, your preferences, or a banking app, your preferences should be set. You need to take care of this to hook the user. And then users should get to view the content of his or his interest. Now, how will you do that? We'll come to it. I know you're thinking of machine learning and AI and all, but how? You are a small team, you're 5 or 10 people. You don't have a big corporate office. How do you do that? We'll talk about that, but this is really important. The next part is reward users with points. Keep them engaged, give them points, and don't give them points which nobody values, right? Points should be valued with the community is in. For example, Stack Exchange, you have points on that. So the community, the coding community values your rating on Stack Exchange. And when you want to get user to sign up for something, don't push it too much. I don't like when these websites say that, sign up and sign up and sign up. They try to know who the user is, Economic Times and all. I don't like it when they force it. They kind of pushes me back. And also don't try to invade the privacy. When they realize it, they will quit. So finally, I have this suggestion for you. When you go for cloud, pick up any of the cloud services, and they all have their own advantages and disadvantages. So I'm not preferring anyone, but I am talking about cloud with respect to Amazon Web Services. Start with Amazon Web Services or any other cloud and use a SageMaker. Now, I want to emphasize you are a small team with a small budget and you don't want to build in your own solutions, right? It will take you years to build them. So do all the things like the behavior tracking and remember the previous slide I was talking about, how do you give the user content that he expects? To do that, you need stuffs here that are mentioned here, and these are all available on cloud. You don't have to have a big engineering team to do that. You can do it in an affordable budget. I don't know what is affordable, that can change, but then it can be done in a budget that probably a group of people, a small group of people can afford. Try the SageMaker. It can build and train and deploy machine learning models. So the content that you have that can be used to build and train your data, and so that you can give that to user. And then you can use the augmented AI. It can easily implement human review of the machine learning predictions. So the predictions made here, it can make a review out of that. And there is a fraud detection way. Now think of it, you're developing something that needs to check fraud detection. I can't give an example right now. Fraud detection is mostly with the banking, but then if you have to do that, can you develop it? You can't. If you want to do image and video analysis of all the data that you have, you can't do that. You want to personalize the content. You can't do that alone. You need to use the cloud services, and they are available for you to apply. And this is the, probably I'm coming to the end. So now, if you collect a lot of data, how do you operate on it? Try to explore what is available on the cloud. You can build a data lake of all the data that you have. You can query all your storage data and get some meaning out of it. You can get business insights using QuickSight. You can use Redshift for data warehouse. Now that is a costly affair. I come from a data stage background and I understand how costly that can be. But then with Redshift, you can do it easily. And I know other clouds have it. With Kinesis, you can analyze real-time video and other data. So, and also you can personalize. Now these are not just names, these are services already available on the cloud. And then you can have your connect, you can interact with your customer, with voice in customer, with text with your customer, and then you can have all of the departments working on it. Finally, I want to talk about the DevOps. Now, this is where I started with the code, the Git. I would suggest that as soon as you get used to the Git, move on to the DevOps. Have a code pipeline, code deploy, and code commit. This will make your product stable. Okay. Finally, if you have this is my contact, and if you have a question or something, you can write to us. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhagat. That was a wonderful, wonderful session. On behalf of Open Source India and India Technology Week platform. Thank you for this wonderful session, and we hope to see you again in the next edition of Open Source as well. Any final thoughts before we part ways for today?
I just wish that we'll one day come together, and I'm open to help anyone, either students or anybody who's starting it up. If you need any guidance, these are my contacts. You can reach out to me. And thank you, Open Source India and Technology Week. Whatever you're doing, it's a great job, and I've been your subscriber for a pretty long time.